All right, yo, welcome back to the Who's Right podcast, and it's winter meetings time, and there's a lot to talk about. We didn't go live when the Devin Williams came on, but we'll talk about that in a bit. But before we get started, subscribe to the channel, like this video, let us know your feelings, your thoughts, and yeah, let's get to it. But before we get to it, Victor, how you doing?
Doing great, man. Obviously, you can see little technical difficulties, but I hope you guys enjoy the AI cat video or cat picture of me. I'm excited to talk Mets baseball, though. A lot of news circulating, winter meetings, big week ahead.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and can't wait for something to happen. I think this is kind of like the calm before the storm. Not a lot of things are happening. Everything's really quiet, and I tend to not like that kind of thing. I want things to happen. But before we get into all the winter meeting stuff, we haven't talked about that one, so we'll spend a couple minutes, not too long, because it's at this point is old news. We saw the press conference and stuff like that. But for me, I love the signing. I will love it even more once we get Edwin Diaz back. Because without Edwin Diaz, he's a good closer. But I'm all for that super bullpen. How about you?
No, absolutely. And we saw how fragile bullpens can be. Last year was, a train wreck when AJ Minter went down, and we had even Danny Young go down, and even going back to last year where Brooks Raley went down and Andrew Smith, and so you can never add too many arms. Devin Williams, I think, is still one of the elite closers in baseball, just until last year. And we know, the Yankees seem to mess up pitchers one way or another, but Devin Williams has been an elite closer until he got to the Bronx last year, and he still has that elite stuff. His numbers aren't as bad as they seem. They obviously weren't great last year. He lost his closer job, but he's not going to be the closer here. At least we hope so. And even if he does, I think that he can figure it out. It's going to be interesting to see with this new pitching staff because the pitching coach, but he's got an elite pitch, the Airbender, and the Mets like playing with guys that have this unique arsenal, and so I'm excited to see him in the back end of the bullpen. And it sounds like he's ready for whatever role the Mets give him.
Yeah, I know, and that's what we kind of got from the press conference is that he knows that Edwin is still in play, and he's all for it. And so, a guy that is willing to be in the eighth inning. The good thing about this, sometimes you have a little bit of concern with closers going into the eighth inning role, but because he did it for the Yankees last year, there's not that much of a concern. Like the Ryan Helsley did last year. He couldn't adjust to the eighth inning role, and Devin Williams has done it for when he came up, and he did it last year. First for Josh Hader, and then last year with the Yankees. And so this is a guy that I don't fear will have an issue being in the eighth inning. And since he's been in New York, um, he's now acclimated to New York. So we don't have to worry about a first time player coming to New York. So I really love that. And
Yeah, no, I mean he's definitely ready to pitch in New York. We saw that last year, and he even is shooting shots at the Yankees. Saying because Yankees fans always like to talk, but it's good to see that he can handle the media well and dish it back.
yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. But now we got to get to who the Mets are going to move on to next. Um, is it Edwin Diaz? Is it Pete Alonso? Is it Kyle Schwarber or Bellinger? I don't know. But there's a lot of rumors going around. At first, we heard that Joe Ryan wasn't going to be traded. Um, that's still a possibility. I heard that Scooble now is a possibility of being traded. all these things that are happening, going back and forth, what's true, what's not true. Now Florida is open for business except for Yuri Perez. And what does that mean for a potential Sandy trade? All these guys that we need to talk about fixing our rotation. And a lot of guys out there, even Luis Castillo, I heard in one of the Twitter X Spaces, Luis Castillo potential trade with Seattle. Any of those names um, perk your interest?
You know, I've been a huge Luis Castillo fan for a while. I think he still has some stuff. He gets overlooked because of the talent that's in uh, that rotation, and I think that he's still an elite starting pitcher. I think he can definitely be one of our top level starting pitchers in this organization, and I would be excited for something like that. But he's been rumored to be traded for a while now, and it just seems like they float the idea out there, but don't have real intentions. And so, I'm not holding my breath for a Luis Castillo trade. What I am interested in is how the Mets are continuing to be in talks about Framber Valdez, and he's like we talked about last year or last week. He's not one of these guys that is super exciting, but he has the grit that we need as Mets fans in this Mets organization. He has experience pitching in the postseason, being that front level guy. Even if he doesn't have the stuff that we think he has, he still has proven it, has done it before, and I think that he can handle the big media in New York. I know we've talked about what it looked like and him throwing a pitcher or a pitch intentionally at his catcher, but I think all of that goes out the window, surrounded by a good clubhouse and having leaders behind him. And so, as this news continues of what being one of the top two teams in the mix for Frounder Valdez, that excites me.
Yeah, no, it's a guy that I have concerns for still. I'm a guy that doesn't like that that kind of divisive nature. Some people say it's okay to make mistakes and stuff like that, and it is okay to make mistakes, and you it get redeemed from it. But is that something because the reason I question it a little bit with the Mets is not because he can't come back from it, but we're about to get rid of a guy like Jeff McNeil because of his hothead kind of demeanor. And if we bring in another guy just to replace uh, McNeil in the pitching rotation, I don't know if that's going to do any better for our clubhouse, right? I know pitchers and the fielders are different, but is it um, bringing in another guy that's very similar to McNeil? Because obviously we talked about McNeil and his issues with Lindor, and you know, is Framberg going to have an issue with Alvarez? That's a question that I have my only concern with a guy like Framber. I know, I used to be a Framber guy, but until that cross up, it kind of concerns me. And he's a guy that is hittable. So I know he's been a good pitcher, but is he the guy that will bring stability to our rotation? I don't know.
Then the only reason I would push back on you with that is that he has had several successful seasons pitching for the Astros to where um, he's been reliable. He's been one of those stopper guys, and that's what the Mets need right now. We need a guy that can stop the bleeding, and I think Framber Valdez has done that. He has never floated above, except for one season above a 4 ERA, and that's screams stopper to me. And at the end of the day, we have all of these great talented arms in the rotation with Senga and Manaya, and we can get excited about McLean. We can get excited about the future of these guys. Clay Holmes pitched well last year. We still don't know what he's going to look like, but Framber Valdez has been the stopper for the Astros these past you know almost 10 years, and so I think even before he was named that stopper, he has been doing it for them, and so I'd love for him to try prove it here in New York. Obviously this market's a little different, and I get your concern because if you are acting that way in an organization outside of New York, then who's to say what you're gonna do when you do come to New York? But I do like the arm talent and the ability to win games. And and on top of that, one of the biggest problems that the Mets have had in the past couple of years is loading the bases, and he's not a guy that's going to do that.
Yeah, no, for sure. And if he comes to the Mets, I'm all for it. I'm be rooting for Framber if he comes to the Mets. I just have some concerns. He's not at the tippy top of my wish list, And but if he comes to the Mets, I'll be all for it. Second guy but the guy that out of the list that we talked about, if Skubal doesn't get traded. Obviously, Skubal's the number one guy. I don't think we need to spend a lot of time. If there's an opportunity to get Skubal, I don't know about trading the whole farm for Skubal because he only has 1 year and he is a Scott Boras client. I would be willing to trade significant pieces to get a Skubal. But the guy in the second tier that of the Peraltas, the Ryans, and the Sandys. I would. I'm a personally. I'm a Sandy fan. That's the guy that has, I believe, the most potential out of those three. He's already won a Cy Young, and second year removed out of Tommy John. I think Sandy, out of those three guys, if we're going to trade for a piece that's not Skubal, I think Sandy would be the piece that I would trade for.
Yeah, and we talked about this last week. He has that he has that resume that makes your eyes sparkle. He's this guy that we would love to see in a Mets uniform just for the sake of not killing the Mets, because that's all he's done as a Marlin is kill the Mets, whether it was with complete games or pushing us out of the playoffs. He's been able to give us a headache over these past couple of years, and I would be excited to see him. And I will say, if he doesn't get traded in this offseason, he's going to get traded at the deadline because there's no way the Marlins are contending this year, and they're going to have to sell Sandy, whether it's low or high. But I think there's going to be a market for him. Yeah. And I think they're going to have to sell him. But if we are talking on the trade market, I would still want one of those guys from the Twins, just for the fact that we need a center fielder, and if they sell one of those starting pitchers, either Pablo Lopez or Joe Ryan, then they're selling Byron Buxton too. And if we can get him in a package, then I think that move makes so much better than just a Sandy move.
Yeah, no, and I can't disagree with you there. The only concern I have with going after a Buxton, and this from experience with Buxton on your fantasy team, is that he doesn't stay healthy. That's my only concern with trading for a Buxton and giving up significant pieces for a Buxton, because he, obviously all the talent is there, but the question is he going to stay healthy? And the question is, because he averages about 100 games a year, but those 100 games, where do they come? Do they come in the beginning of the season? Or do they come when we actually need them? You know what I mean? And that's my only concern and pushback when it comes to a guy like Buxton.
Yeah, no, and I can't argue with you. You know, he has been injury prone, even to the point where he was a superstar at one point, but and then got pushed out of that. But I'll tell you, last year, he had a great year last year, one of his career years, where he played 126 games, most games, or second most games he's ever played. And he uh, had 83 RBIs, which will fit right in the middle of the lineup. And he's a guy that will get on base, and steal bases. So if he's healthy, he's going to be a dynamic player that we can fit right in the middle, if not lead off at times. He's got that great resume as well. And so I would not even look because we were talking about that with so many other players, even a guy like Harrison Bader from a couple of years ago. He always got hurt, but look at him now, one of the top free agents on the market right now at center field. And so I think we have to look past that because um, although we don't want to look past it too much because obviously that's a concern. And I can't say that Stearns is going to bite on that because he just sold Nimmo, uh, probably for a similar reason. Um, but I think that it's worth the risk.
Yeah, no, and again, this is another guy that I'd be cheering for once he comes to the Mets. I just have that concern about his health. You know, again, the dream for me, if we're going to get an outfielder by trade, would be a Tatis. Obviously, we don't know if he's available or not. They say he's not available, but as far as a month ago, um, Skubal was supposedly not available, and now a report comes out that he's available. So we don't know what's really going on with these teams. And you know, if Tatis is the available, I would love to see him come and be that guy that moves Soto to the left. But I digress. If Buxton's the guy that comes, I'll be more than cheer for him. But let's say we don't get an outfielder in trade. Are you the willing to sign a Cody Bellinger to a long term deal? Because I am not personally. I'm not a big Cody Bellinger fan. I know that's going to scream in other Mets fans' ears, but I don't think he's the consistency that we need. I know he can play a bunch of different positions, but if we just got rid of a big contract for a guy like Nemo, do you think that's something that what Stearns would do?
I think we need Cody Bellinger, but I don't think we need him on a long term deal. And I'll tell you how it's going to play out if we do end up signing him. We're gonna get him on a 2-year high AAV deal with an opt out of the first after the first, just like what he signed with the Cubs or similar. And we're gonna give room to Carson Bench to compete for the spot because we've already kind of seen inclinations that David Stearns trusts this guy and wants to give him a shot at least in Carson Bench. And so I think that he's going to get that shot. But I don't think that we can go into next year saying this is your position of play. Because if we do that, then we're worse than we were last year, not having Brandon Nimmo in the outfield. And I know we can talk about his defense, but he has an elite glove out there in left field. He used to play center field, and although he has a noodle of an arm, his glove he was able to cover a lot of that field, and I think Cody Bellinger is a guy that's already done that in the major leagues. We've seen him uh, play elite level defense in the outfield. And so if we go into next year just giving these kids a shot, we've seen that backfire on us so much. And so whether it's a trade or if it's I don't even want to say settling because Cody Bellinger is a former MVP, but I think that we need to if we want to compete next year, we need to sign or trade for a guy. And I don't want it to be long term, but if it has to be, then we got to do what we have to do.
Well, the question is, how much pressure does Stearns feel? Does he feel like they need to do a whole bunch of things, or is he finally putting his plan into place? Because if he's finally putting his plan into place, that means he ran it uh, by Cohen, and Cohen signed off on it. And that's a big question, because obviously, trading a guy like Nimmo, you're putting your plan into place, and is Cody Bellinger part of that plan? Honestly, we at the end of the day, we don't know. Where we just speculate here, but I'm in full agreement with you that a long-term deal can't be for Cody Bellinger. But the question is, because I don't think he's going to sign a deal like he did with the Cubs. I think his market is a little bit better than it was back then. So I don't think he has to settle for a 2 year deal. I do think that somebody will give him a 3, 4, maybe even 5 year deal, and because that's what he's looking for, and I think he's going to hold out for it. And I think that's a different situation than, for example, a guy like Pete, one of our guys that we want back. Because Pete, one, is older and is a first baseman, a DH at that, mostly a DH. If we think he's a DH, I assume that the rest of the league thinks he's a DH. So obviously, the question is it Pete plus Cody Bellinger, or is it just Pete that we're going to be settling for? Because I still think that we're going to get Pete back. I think that I don't think the market for Pete is as large as other people make it seem in the media. Um, I just think that it's a two-horse race right now. It's the Red Sox, quote unquote. What I don't know if that's true or not, and it's the Mets. I don't know anybody else that's connected with Pete, and I think if we get to the table and we sign a guy like Pete, I don't think we're going to need to sign a guy like Bellinger. Because he's a guy that we giving him a long term deal isn't the answer. So I think the key to our offseason really hinges on if we get Pete back or not. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's kind of sad, because Pete Alonso is, I think, a great player. I know a lot of people just see him as a good player, but I think he's a great player, and I think he deserves a better market than he's getting right now. But he's not, and just because of that, I think that it needs to be we have to sign Pete Alonso plus because if so my thought is if he goes out and signs a 3 or 4 year deal high AAV, and we pass on that, but we choose to go sign Bellinger for the same deal, then that's a big mistake. I think if we can sign both of those guys for similar contracts, then that's going to be the ideal offseason, and we're 100% a lot better going into next year with the consistency that Bellinger has given and the power that Pete brings. I think that almost completes our lineup with maybe we get some help from one of these guys coming up that can provide either defense or offense because the other great thing about signing uh, Pete Alonso and Cody Bellinger is that Cody Bellinger can also play first base if we want him to. And so, say one of these guys breaks out, one of these guys in Carson Bench or Jet Williams breaks out, and we decide to play one of those guys in left field, then that gives us the ability to then move Pete or Cody Bellinger over to play elite level defense at first base, and then move one of those guys that are hot and ready for the major leagues to play. And so signing both of those free agents is, I think, pivotal uh, in this scenario, and especially from the rumors that we've gotten that Pete Alonso has not gotten the market that he's seeking. Just and like I said, it's sad because I think he's a lot better of a player than, and I even think his defense is a lot better than people are putting it out to be.
Well, I think with a guy like Pete, he's a guy that saying that he deserves a better market. Unfortunately, your market is what your market is. But I think his defense can improve with a guy like Simeon next to him, elite level second baseman playing defense, because that shortens your the range, right? Part of the reason why Pete's not a great defensive first baseman is because of his range. He doesn't have the best mobility out there. That's a big part, and his throwing. So if he doesn't have to be so far away from first base, maybe we wouldn't have to worry about those back throws that he has. And so I think a guy like Simeon can help Alonso and his defense and actually look a little bit more adequate than he has the last couple of years. So um, I agree with you. It's not as bad as people make it seem because people make it seem like it's the worst. But I think it's bad enough that it's noticeable. And with a guy like Simeon, I think that'll help his defense because he doesn't have to move with the range that he doesn't have, and they compensate for by putting him in positions that are either a little further away from first base or um, causing him to make those throws that hurt our pitchers. Um, you know, the famous one is the Senga one, but he also had a bad throw to McLean, and we all would go nuts if McLean got hurt because of a peak throw. So I do think that he'll play adequate defense, like you said, but I also think that Pete needs the Mets as much as the Mets need Pete. I think that's the reason why I want to bring him back. Is because not only is he a homegrown guy, but he needs the Mets just like Pete. The Mets need Pete. Um, the last thing that I want to touch on before we get into our prediction is um, what do you think about these Japanese pitcher, especially specifically Imai, the guy that the Mets are connected with? He's a guy that I think would do great. He's a guy that also said that doesn't want to pitch with any other Japanese pitcher in the rotation. So what does that say? Can we convince him to stay with a Senga, or does Senga need to go before Imai actually signs on the dotted line? He has until January 2nd to sign, and so um, I would love to see it because I would love to see a little bit of a shakeup in our rotation as well, and I would love them to sign Imai and trade for one of these pitchers that has a little bit of control. Because at the end of the day, if you're giving up um, some prospects like a Jonathan or Sproat for some of these guys with control, um, and you sign a guy like Imai, then you get trading those prospects that you think are going to help you either later on this year or next year isn't going to hurt as much. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I mean, for me, and last thing on Pete Alonso, happy birthday, kid. I hope you're living it up today. But uh, you know, um, it always scares me with these Japanese pitchers because uh, they always seem electric, and you never know what you're gonna get. But in these recent years, we've gotten a lot of great starting pitching in the MLB, transferring over from the MPB. We think about guys like Yoshinobu Yamamoto, who blew it up and um, didn't seem like he was impressive the first year, but then turned it on this past year and won MVP, World Series MVP, and then Shota Imanaga, who almost won Rookie of the Year last year, and Kodai Senga, who was great. And so with Japan has something figured out is their pitching, because um, they've been elite. And so I would love to see a guy over here, but I don't want to take an experiment this year. I think we're done with the experiments. I know that that's Stern's game, but it stressed me out last year, and I don't think that this is the year to do that. And obviously he's played a lot of great baseball over the years. You look at his numbers and they sparkle. But I think that this year we need, like you said, a reliable guy, someone that we know is a sure thing. And if he ends up being great, then that's awesome. And I would feel bad uh, later on, but maybe not so bad if we get one of these guys that are more reliable and has proven it in the MLB.
Yeah, no, I get that, and so that's why I say, Anima, with one of these pieces in a trade, that's how I would see it. So let's get into the predictions, man. What's going to happen this week in the winter meetings? And I'll let you kick it off. But I'm hoping for an exciting winter meetings. Last year, we had Juan Soto sign, in about half an hour last year, right at 10:10 he signed. So because we're recording it this on Sunday night. So what do you think the Mets are going to do this week, or what do you think they're going to prepare to do?
Well, Edwin Diaz is being signed this week. That's a fact. Like if he's not signed by this week, then he's not being signed until April. So he's going to be signed whether it's us or the Dodgers, and there's no way that the Dodgers can outbid us for Edwin Diaz. Um, I just don't think that's going to be a factor. So Edwin Diaz is coming to the Mets this year, maybe even tomorrow, because we saw last year when he signed early, or when he signed his last contract, he signed immediately, and I think he just wants to hear the market. And so once he starts to meet with these teams, he's already done that. Once he figures out what his market is, and finally gets these final meetings, then he's gonna sign with the Mets this week. Another guy is Pete Alonso. We've talked about Pete Alonso enough, and this is finally it. I think if he doesn't get the contract that he wants, it's not going to be immediately, but by the end of the week, we're going to hear Pete Alonso being signed. And I hate to say it. I have a bad feeling that he's not coming back to the Mets, just for the ruthlessness of Stearns and his defense first approach. I think that he's probably going to go over and sign with the Red Sox, unfortunately, or even the Pirates. The Pirates might make a big splash for him. That would be shocking, but they might give him the money that they want just to keep Skeens under control, and happy. But those are my two Mets free agent predictions. I think those guys are being signed this week. But other than that, I would love to see Cody Bellinger signed this week. Um, that would be awesome. But I do see a big trade coming in. Maybe the Red Sox make a deal with the Mets. Maybe we get a Jarren Duran over here, and that rules out the Cody Bellinger news. Maybe Jarren Duran is the guy that we need to fit in and needs a change of scenery. They've got enough outfielders out there, and we know that they're going to be looking to sell. And so I think this could be a week that we see Jarren Duran moved, and I think there's a good possibility that it's over here to the Mets. And so I think those are my biggest predictions for this week. I'd love to see the Mets sign more of these guys, another elite bat. I don't think Kyle Schwarber signs just yet, and I still don't think that he's going to come to the Mets regardless. But those are my predictions for this week. Cody Bellinger, Duran, Pete, and Edwin are all getting signed this week or traded.
Well, that'll be a big off season, and if that happens. But just to give you a little bit of news, just was on Twitter, and Ken Rosenthal reported that Kyle Schwarber got a 4-year offer from the Pirates. Don't know how true that is, but you know that's what Ken Rosenthal is reporting that Kyle Schwarber is getting an offer from the Pirates, and so we'll see what that means for Pete Alonso. I think that to be honest with you, that Kyle Schwarber is the first guy to come off the board. When Kyle Schwarber comes off the board, that's when we see a Pete signing. And I'm hoping that Kyle signs tonight because that'll, one, give a clear pathway for Pete to sign. Um, not only because he'll know the money that Kyle's getting, but the guys that are looking, the teams that are looking for sluggers this offseason, it'll open the door for anybody else that Pete thinks may get into the fray for his services once Kyle is out of the picture. And so my prediction for the Mets, hopefully this all goes down. Unfortunately the baseball offseason, gets, you get bits and pieces. It doesn't happen all at once. But I'm hoping that this week, what happens is Edwin Diaz signs. The only way that Edwin Diaz does not come back is if somebody gives him a 5-year deal, right? Because the Mets are out there with an offer, and I think the only way that he doesn't come back, because obviously we can't get outbid, but like you mentioned earlier, Stearns is a shrewd guy, and I don't think he's gonna want to give Diaz that 5th year. So I think that um, if the only way we lose him is if somebody gives him that 5th year. But I predict Diaz coming back. I'm hoping that Kyle signs today, so Alonso, we get Alonso back either tomorrow or Tuesday, and a guy that we mentioned towards the end of our little preview was Imai. I want to see Imai sign with the Mets. It's one of those things where I think he can sign earlier than his posting date. I think he wants to sign earlier, and I think that that can be done this week. And this is a lot to happen in 1 week, but I'm hoping that we get a Sandy trade of some sort. So that's Sandy, Imai, um, Pete Alonso, and Diaz back in the fold. And we can figure out another position. Like I said before, I'm not a big Cody Bellinger fan, so we can figure out another person to man that outfield, whether it's um, well, I don't know, Dallas Garcia or something like that, or are we trading away Senga to somewhere like Seattle uh, and send Senga and McNeil down to Seattle for a guy like Randy Rosarena? Is that something that we may do? Sandy kind of hurts that defensive first. I mean, Randy kind of hurts that defensive first kind of mantra that Stearns talks about because he's not a great outfielder. But he's only signed for 1 more year, so we'll see him this year, and we don't have to bring him back next year. But um, one guy that we didn't touch on is Luis Robert, and but we can talk about him at a later date. I don't think he's going to get traded anytime soon, so I'm not worried about that right now. But the guys that I want to see: Pete Diaz back, Imai as a free agent pitcher, and Sandy as a trade with the Marlins, and then we go from there, and then we can still work out the other trades to get some guys out of the rotation, so we can fit these guys in. Um, so that's my prediction. Either one, I'd roll with. I'm not a big fan of Cody, but you know, if your prediction comes true, I'll be willing to say, "Let's go, Cody." So, but what do you think? What do you think of um, um, the potential Imai and Sandy trade?
Yeah, no, I mean, I I would love to see Sandy like we talked about. That would be awesome if we saw that this week. Um, I feel like the Marlins are delusional and might think that they have the ability to compete this year, and so maybe that's where their heads are. And if their heads are there, then it'd be hard to see Sandy traded. Um, the only way I see that happening is if we trade one of our top level prospects, and I really don't want to do that for a guy that's expiring after this year, no matter how good he is. And Imai, like I said, that would be exciting. I would love to see him over here, especially with you know, the control that we would have over him. But, I think that if we do sign Imai, then we have to sign somebody else. Like it can't just be Imai. We can't go into next year with question marks. After this year, we went in thinking that we had things figured out, and then turns out that we didn't. So we need to go in knowing that we have a frontline starter, and if we don't, then one of these guys are going to have to step up and surprise us. That might make this season even more exciting. But I don't, we're all Mets fans, so we know what it's like to be stressed out. But I would rather lean on the safer side, especially knowing that we have a good um, uh, Pobo now. And so I would love that. One of the points that you touched on, or a couple of them, is one, Jeff McNeil. I didn't even think about that. Yeah, I think that he'll probably be traded, um, whether it's for a prospect haul or something else. I know that they might give him up for a bag of chips at this point. I don't think they want him much longer on the team, especially after the news came out last week about the conflict. But the other thing is that Edwin Diaz comment. That if it is true and that David Stearns doesn't want to budge on a fifth year, then that's just ridiculous, man. Because we saw them give a 3-year deal with a good amount of money to Devin Williams, who's the same age. And if they're not willing to do
No,
that,
no,
give
Devin's younger.
no, they're the same age.
No, no,
He's
Devin's younger.
31. They're both 31. But either way, if they're not willing to give Edwin Diaz, who's been elite uh, for years, then give him 2 more years, then that would be crazy to me. And that would lose all my faith in Stearns, and I would be calling for him to be fired immediately.
Well, 5-year contract. I know this is going to be an unpopular opinion, but we paid him for 3 years, and he's only given us a year and a half, if that. Because one of those years he was out with that injury he got at the WBC. So, you know, this is, and he wants to be the highest paid closer. So it's going to be at least 20 to 22 million for a guy like Diaz. And so, and that's the other difference. That's elite closer money, and I not that he doesn't deserve it, because I do believe that Diaz is the top of the line when it comes to closer. But giving him 5 years, that may be a little bit of a stretch for me. And I might have to agree with Stearns, but we'll see. What do you guys think? On replay or in the comments, let us know what you think. Would you give Diaz the 5 years? Would you want to, or would you not? Would you cap it at 4 years? for an aging player like Diaz. I'm hoping that it's an exciting winter meetings. That even if it's not the Mets doing a lot of things. Um, I hope that there's a lot of player movement because want to see some action this week, whether it's either the Mets or some other team, just to get the ball rolling, get the juices flowing, and warm up this time of the year when it's cold out there. But before we get out of here, Victor, any last words?
Nah, man. I want to see something exciting happen this week. I think that's what we all want to see. Um, I will say Notre Dame was snubbed to get out to not make it into the playoffs. That was uh, amazing that Alabama made it over Miami and Notre Dame. But I digress.
Yeah,
Let's
you
go
got
Mets.
that. You got that SEC bias right there. Alabama slash SEC bias.
That's crazy. But this is gonna be an exciting week. A lot of news is gonna come out, and something's gonna happen. So it'll get the ball rolling. So let's go Mets.
Absolutely. And before we get out of here, subscribe to the channel, leave us your comments on replay. Let us know how you're feeling, and let's go Mets.